Welcome to your September 30th edition of Off the Mat. Today we're going to be talking about UFC 135, and we're going to preview UFC Fight Night Live 6. You're watching Off the Mat. Welcome to Off the Mat. I'm Bernard Oliver. That's Jeremy Hurt. That's John Urcuyo. Jeremy, how you doing today, man?
I'm fantastic.
Didn't we have a great card this weekend, you guys?
Fantastic. It was so exciting. Nothing else you could be expecting. What do you say?
Just a great card all the way through. Let's get right into it, guys. Let's roll straight into it. One of the fights we didn't get to air with you guys last week that we talked about was Nate Diaz versus one of his idols. He called him after the fight, Takanori Gomi. Man, what a fight this was. This was a battle until Diaz got the win at the end, and what a beautiful win it was. Transitioning from the triangle into the armbar was an amazing move. It's just one of those things that Jeremy always says is a textbook move. He looked just like his brother out there doing that, executing that move, and which is, saying a lot because Nick is a much better jiu-jitsu guy than Nate Diaz is. Diaz hasn't graduated to that black belt yet. But man, this fight was just it was all over the place for a little bit, and then Diaz got him on the ground and it was over and done with.
Yeah, and we did talk about this a little bit, off camera last week, and I think we were all pretty much in the same boat on this one. Diaz is too long. He's got too good a combination. The things that you see that beat a Diaz brother were not the things that Takanori Gomi would bring to this fight, and it's, indeed that's how it played out. So, I mean, again, when all three of us can agree on something, generally speaking, because I'm one of the three of us, it's right, and it was this time as well.
Like we were saying before the show, Jeremy always finds a way to get up in there. But, John, seeing Diaz come back and just, redeem himself after the loss to Mr. McDonald, didn't he just look amazing in that fight?
Well, you can expect nothing less from Nate Diaz. I mean, we came out here, we talked about Gomi's strengths, his weaknesses, and one of the weaknesses we talked about was his effect on being submitted in a lot of fights. He had trouble with that. And I don't discount Diaz's ability. He's not Nick, but a brown belt is very, very impressive. And he showed his skills. Moving position, he kind of almost baited Gomi into that armbar because he, had the triangle in place, switched it over, wins the fight, and it's exciting. And, just another win. I know Jeremy was wishing he had the record I did this past fight card. Just going to have to stick it to him right there for that 6-1 card. But, as a fan, what else do you want to see? You want to see a Diaz brother on the ground showing his skills, and he did that in, fashionable way.
Yeah, and Diaz coming out, I wasn't trying to, downplay. Nate Diaz is one of my favorite fighters. He's got to be top 3 one of my favorite fighters ever. Rampage Nate, and I might throw somebody else in there later, like Brock or something. But Nate, I mean, like I said, he came out. He was very textbook the way he did it. After the fight, he actually had a lot to say about Gomi, saying, I don't care what anybody says. Takanori Gomi is a legend, and I hate that I had to fight him almost, that kind of thing. And he's saying that Gomi, if you couldn't tell, when Gomi was in the triangle, he was giving him his arm to, give him the arm bar so he can get out of the triangle hold and then stand back up. And, Nate Diaz's jiu-jitsu was just way too good, and he gave him the arm, and he took the arm into the arm bar, but he kept him in the arm bar, submitted him. That was the end of the fight. Great ending to a magnificent fight, especially one opening up the card like that. And if you guys didn't get a chance to look at our write-ups that we had on UFC 135, you can go to uatvonline.net. It'll usually be, in the first thing you see when you get on the site, it'll be in the featured. If you can't see it there, click on sports, click on Off the Mat, go to Off the Mat News, and you'll see our write-ups there. This week, we had Jeremy, we had myself, we had John Urcuyo, we had the man Brett Rory, the young blood I like to call him, make write-ups this week. So you guys go check those out and see how we did. You can kind of grade us. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little gassed heavyweights. Mr. Mark Hunt and Ben Rothwell did not turn out the way that everybody thought it was going to turn out. When we come back, we'll talk about the rest of UFC 135, and we'll preview UFC Fight Night 6.
Reporting for UATV, I'm Tony Cosgrove.
Reporting for UATV, I'm Courtney Brown.
Welcome back to Off the Mat, guys. As usual, I'm joined by Jeremy Hurt and John Urcuyo. You guys still doing good? John, how you doing?
Oh, I'm fantastic.
You good? Fantastic.
Fine and fantastic.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
I'll create my own words if I have
Making
to.
words up here. All right. Well, getting back into these fights, as we said
I'm
before the
doing
break.
good, too, so.
What? Huh? You just threw me off my rhythm right there. Anyway, before we left the break, guys, we talked about heavyweights getting gassed. Now, Ben Rothwell, and Mark Hunt was another one of those fights we kind of predicted to be a war. I mean, I expected it to be a war. You have the old school, the veteran Mark Hunt coming out against, the new school guy, head-kicking submission artist, and Ben Rothwell. And, it just didn't turn out that way. It turned into two big guys in a cage trying to hit each other and miss it.
Yeah, there's a saying, fatigue makes cowards of us all, and you saw that in this fight, and whenever you get into that kind of situation, Rothwell's not like a first-week fighter. It's not like this was the first time I'm in a cage, what's that? Mm-hmm. It's not like that. But at the same time, Mark Hunt's been doing this for a really, really, really long time. And, when you get into that situation where the fatigue starts weighing in on you, typically I like the guy that's been in there a bunch of times, and that's what we saw in this fight. And it doesn't hurt when you're, world-class kickboxer at that.
Definitely. And, you see these guys, and there was a lot of talk in the MMA world about, these guys turn into, what are these guys doing in the ring? They're an embarrassment to MMA, this, and that. I mean, you could say that and on one hand, and on the other hand, these are still two top guys that are going to kick anybody's butt who walks up on them. I mean, these are still MMA athletes at the end of the day. And, it's just one of those things that you kind of have to take in stride and be like, well, everybody's not going to bang for 3 rounds. Everybody's not going to have, all this moxie for 3 rounds. Some guys, coming into their heavyweights, they weigh, 260-plus pounds. Can't run around the ring for 3 rounds.
Absolutely not. And these are guys that have come in and, they can bang. That's what they do. They stand up. They're strikers. That's their game plan. So if they're throwing their lights out, in the first round, it's not too surprising that they're not going to be able to last throughout the whole thing. It's unfortunate because they are 2 great strikers. And I know that everybody in the crowd there and on TV really wanted to see fireworks. But sometimes we don't get that all the time. 2 very, world-class fighters. These guys are definitely deserve the right to be in the ring and definitely put on a good performance for at least 5 minutes. But, sometimes it happens, like you said, when you get up in that 260-plus, up there close to 300 pounds, you're going to run into situations like that. I don't see this being a problem. Moving on, I'm sure that we're going to get some more exciting fights from these 2 guys, but sometimes those things happen. And
speaking of exciting fights, boy, was Matt Hughes versus Josh Koscheck everything that you'd want to see in an MMA match. Man, Josh Koscheck came out there and dismantled Matt Hughes, put the man in retirement. I hate to say it, but he put him in retirement. Josh Koscheck came out, he banged with Matt Hughes, and he tested that chin very early. Matt Hughes hit him with a jab in that eye that St. Pierre had, broke the orbital bone in Koscheck, and after he lost those jitters from getting hit in the eye, he said after the fight he got hit in the eye and he was kind of having a flashback, like, oh, I don't want to break my orbital bone again. But after he got out, he tested Matt Hughes' chin, and Matt Hughes failed.
Like we were talking about last week, that was the situation. Hughes, he's up there in age. Mm-hmm. Guy's definitely a legend, no one taking anything away from him. But that chin has lost a lot of its luster, and it's a problem from him moving on. Not taking away anything from the wrestling game or his overall conditioning. It's just with age, you can't take those punches all the time. And Koscheck, he lit him up. The guy's got some power behind those punches, and he used them very effectively to take Hughes out. We saw what happened. Koscheck's still ready to move back. I know he wants another shot. Who knows if he's going to get one anytime soon, but he did a great job putting forth his game plan and really attacking the weaknesses of Matt Hughes.
Jeremy, now speaking on Koscheck, right off of that note that John leaves off on, where do you see Koscheck going in his next fight?
I mean, it's kind of the John Fitch problem at this point. I mean, once you fought GSP and GSP's embarrassed you, it's kind of a thing where you're like, well, we don't want to see that fight again. And the problem with Josh Koscheck is the GSP has now done that to him twice. And not only has he done it twice, he's done it wrestling, and he's done it striking. He's pretty much said, whatever Josh Koscheck can do, I can make him look silly doing the same thing. And when you get in that point, it's the Kenny Florian problem. It's the John Fitch problem. Some guys are really elite fighters. They're top 5 fighters for the entirety of their career, but they can never get over that hump. Dan Henderson in the UFC. There's a lot of guys you can point at. And it's going to be real hard for Koscheck at 170. I mean, that division's going to be held for a little while. And honestly, when we get to a point, whenever we advance to that point where someone does come out there and they defeat GSP, I don't know how you could, think that that's going to make it any easier for Josh Koscheck. That someone that beat GSP, now you've got to beat him instead. It's hard for him. He's not going anywhere. I mean, he's a Division I level wrestler. He's a guy that was on the original Ultimate Fighter. Josh Koscheck will be in UFC 375 fighting Randy Couture's grandkids. So I mean, he's not going anywhere. He's got a future. You can make a heck of a career being not the champion. Like I said, John Fitch, Kenny Florian, you can go down the list of the names of the guys that have done it. But I don't know. It's hard for me to see Josh Koscheck ever putting a belt around his waist at 170.
And, kind of just a little small note I'd like to add there. I would like to see Koscheck move to another weight class and try his luck there. I see he's an incredible fighter, incredible striker, incredible wrestler, like you said. I'd like to see him move to another class. But speaking of sparks flying, John Jones versus Rampage Jackson. Now, I got to talk with my tail between my legs because I picked Rampage Jackson last week. I really felt like he had a lot going for him. He put up a great fight, very good fight, but it was nothing near what needed to happen to defeat John Jones. John Jones, like I said when I was writing the rundown for the show, he beat him head to toe, whether it was kicks to the head all the way down to kicks to the feet, punches into the body, coming out in that weird Spider-Man crawl he came out in the first round. Who knows what that was about. But, John Jones, he's too much for him. He's too much for everybody. Rampage called him. He basically said that he is going to be Anderson Silva in the light heavyweight class, and that's not an understatement at all.
Well, we spoke about this a little bit last week. Eventually, there's going to be a hole in John Jones' game. Today, I don't know what it is. I can't look at it and go, "That's what you're doing wrong." We're gonna need like NFL players, like Chad Ochocinco is going to have to fight Bones Jones at some point. It's going to take like that level of athlete, because the difference with John Bones Jones, obviously the reach. He's got the longest reach of anybody, but then you put that together with such explosive athleticism, the camp that he's in. I just don't know where it goes from. We talked about this ad infinitum. I love Rampage. I really do. I think he's one of the greatest fighters ever at 205. John Bones Jones is a tall order for anybody, Definitely. And I mean anybody.
Definitely. And like I said, Rampage gave him the best fight he's had in the UFC. And
it wasn't all that competitive.
And it wasn't anything near where he beat him on striking. He beat him wrestling because he choked him out at the end, flattened him out, got the rear naked choke at the end. I mean, he didn't get embarrassed, but he was never quite there. If he could have caught Jones in one of those haymakers that he was throwing at the end of round one, it probably would have landed. It probably would have hurt him pretty bad. But Jones and Rampage both had great, defensive and, evasive moves in the match. And, Jones is just a little bit longer, a little bit quicker than Rampage. And, on that note, we go to Rashad Evans and John Jones. John, where do you see that fight going?
Well, in this whole arena, we talk about matchups. And right now, there is not one person that matches up well against John Jones. Rashad Evans is going to run into a very, very similar problem as Rampage, finding a way to get inside of that unbelievable reach, the speed, the quickness. I mean, John Jones is a premier athlete. This is a guy who could go and play another sport and do well at it. You take Rashad, a guy who is getting up there in age. He wants to make his last stand. He wants to get that title run, that shot. I don't see him having the right tools to take on Jones. We saw that Rampage tried to feel out for as much as possible, tried to find that distance, and he couldn't do it. Jones was too quick. He evaded any kind of attack that Rampage came with. And I'm telling you, I think Rashad Evans is going to have just as much trouble or even more trouble. He might have another stanky leg moment.
I like how you say it with all seriousness in your face.
John Jones, he showed his all-around game as well. Went further than probably he has ever. Finished it out with a submission. He just beat down his opponent, and I think he's going to be able to do that, especially against Rashad Evans. I don't like the matchup. I can't think of a really good matchup right now other than maybe a 205-pound Anderson Silva.
There you go, right there. I think the stanky leg is going to follow Rashad Evans all the way through his career. Kudos to Rampage Jackson and the guys out of Arlington, Texas with the stanky leg song, because that song and that video on YouTube is going to follow Rashad Evans to the end of his career. It doesn't matter if he's champion again. It's going to follow. But guys, we're going to go to a break here. When we get back, we're going to go over UFC Live 6. Now this is a UFC Live card with a championship on the line. We'll talk about that when we get back, guys. You're watching Off the Mat.
What would you do with $500?
Oh, I would buy a KitchenAid mixer.
New snow blades. Go skiing.
I'm gonna spend it like fixing my car. Go on a road trip, I would think.
Take a little mini vacation.
I think I'd go shopping.
Throw a party.
Yeah, just a normal party.
Everyone's invited.
Would you give it up for a single cigarette?
I would say no.
No way.
No, not at all.
You could be fined up to $500 for smoking one cigarette at the University of Arkansas. Is it worth it?
I was imitating Rampage. What's wrong with that?
Just saying. It looked pretty funny.
That's what
Your
Rampage-
seizure and everything.
That's what happened to Rashad. Machida gave him that seizure, man.
High school kids wanting to get it on. Apparently what he does for money is make children. We learned that apparently segways are really important. In Tron, they go thread the whip. Neil Diamond, I like to call him the Jewish Elvis. Fridays at 9, I'm here, love me, please, not so late.
Off the Mat, I'm Bernard Oliver. That's Jeremy Hurt. That's John Urcuyo. Getting into UFC Fight Night 6. Now, I always have a problem with these events because they're named, I don't like the way they're named. You have Fight Night Live and you have UFC Live. So, excuse me, this is UFC Live 6, not Fight Night Live 6. I don't understand that. I wish they would, change the name of those or do something with that. Am I alone here?
Yeah.
Because, y'all pretty quiet. It seems like I'm pretty alone.
It's kind of confusing. I don't
A
know.
little bit. When you're trying to look
For some
up
people.
history, I'm looking up UFC Live, Fight Night Live 6, and I'm finding old fights. Anyway, so getting into the fight card, guys, we have Matt Danzig versus Matt Wyman 2. Man, I didn't even, this fight kind of snuck up on me. I didn't even think they were going to make this, this fight come up, especially on a Fight Night Live, live card, whatever you call it. The last fight ended in a controversial guillotine choke. Danzig didn't tap out to the choke, but the ref saw that maybe he was falling asleep, or he viewed that, he was going to sleep or something like that. So he stopped the fight. Very controversial end to that fight. So now you get the rematch. Now you get the guys, there's all the trash talking aside, all the, the hurt and, pain of the last fight. You get this rematch. What's going to happen in this fight?
Well, you see Danzig, he's got something to, something to come after. This guy's a former lightweight champ, in King of the Cage. He is a definite test for Wyman, and I think, this is exactly what the fans want to see. You have controversy. Hey, Dana, you got to fix it. You got to set it up. You got to set straight with who's really the best fighter, and this is what we're going to see. I think it's going to be an entertaining fight. Definitely bad blood. You've got to love rematches because it really escalates just that, that testosterone level. These guys just want to rip each other apart. I mean, it means something. That's why you love people in mixed martial arts, because it's just so, animalistic. You got to go out there and prove that you're more male than the other guy. And I think that this is exactly what we're going to see. I really am excited about this fight.
Yeah, MMA definitely satisfies a barbaric hunger that we have somewhere deep inside. I know it satisfies mine because I'm ready to go, work out afterwards, and I'm ready to go to sleep after that. So it's one of those things that just satisfies that hunger. At least we're not out killing somebody.
And
we're watching other people beat each other up.
That's right. Danzig, extreme couture guy too, and they are known for doing very well and preparing very well for rematches.
Jeremy, how do you see this fight going?
If you watched the Ultimate Fighter the season that Matt Danzig was on, you realize that he's kind of he's wired a little bit differently. I guess would be a nice way to put it upstairs. And I agree 100%. Most of the time, whenever you see a guy and he's complaining, a referee stops in and stops the fight for whatever reason, the guy gets, it was good to fight. Most of the time, I'm like, it is what it is. In this fight, he legitimately got screwed. Capital S, the guy got screwed in this fight. And I don't think, again, he's wired a little bit differently. I don't think that he's like, whatever, things happen. I have a feeling he's going to be very motivated, very, focused for this fight. I don't see him as the kind of guy that gets, gigantic adrenaline and then dumps it in the first minute. I think he'll come out. I think he'll focus his rage. He's a very deliberate guy with, intense but deliberate. And I think that's what, you can expect to see versus Wyman. I think he tries to stay out of those positions in this fight. Obviously, doesn't allow Wyman to, get in those positions. And I think Danzig, I think he's probably the guy where a lot of times you don't count on emotion to win you a fight. It can be more detrimental. I think it's going to help him in this fight.
All right, very quickly, who you got, John?
I'm going to have to go with Danzig winning this rematch.
Jeremy, who you got?
After everything I just said, I'm going with Wyman.
Wyman coming off of a fight with Dennis Siver, one of the best in the weight class that he could ever fight, man. I got to go with Danzig, man. I got to go with him. He's going to be mad about that last match. He's going to come in and he's going to get it done. I got to go with Danzig on that. Moving on, though, a fight I'm very excited about. Anthony Johnson versus Charlie Brenneman. One, because I haven't seen Anthony Johnson fight in so long because he was hurt. He's coming off of a nice win. Charlie Brenneman, haven't seen him fight in a long time either. Really happy to see, these two wrestlers go at it because they're wrestlers that can stand up and they can strike. Two, they're very big for their weight class. Let me put it that way. Anthony Johnson and Brenneman. What's your take on this fight, John?
Well, like we've seen, UFC is moving into that super athlete, stage, and he is a super athlete. The guy is just fantastic. He's quick, very strong, good wrestler, just that capability of being able to make a mistake but being so athletic that you can make up for that. And I think he's got a tough test coming up here, but he's gone through a nice little tough test of his last fights. We've talked about how he has been injured, and that is unfortunate because that can really make you step back as a fighter. But, 4 of his last 5s he's won. 4 of his last 5 fights he has won. The only loss coming to, a very motivated Josh Koscheck. I think this could be a very good spot for him to come and really get back on track in his mixed martial arts career.
Now, Jeremy, speaking on these two guys being off for a while, Johnson, nursing an injury, Brenneman being off, the Spaniard being off. Last time you saw Johnson fight, he wasn't used to the weight class that he moved into. He was kind of gassed, he kind of got tired, still pulled it out at the end. Do you see Brenneman kind of trying to exploit that a little bit?
I think if there's somebody that's probably geared to do that, it probably is Brenneman because he does kind of have that consistent come-forward wrestling game. And, as we've seen in the past, last time that we saw Charlie Brenneman, he took a fight on extremely short notice against the guy that they were really grooming for a title shot, and he came out and beat him. So, if you're asking in this particular fight with a guy like Anthony Johnson who's been off for so long, is it a good thing to be running into a guy that can take a fight at the last second and win it over a top contender? I don't think, I wouldn't say that's a positive in the Rumble camp. If you're doing pros and cons, I wouldn't say that'd go tick mark in the pro side. I think it's a very tough matchup for Anthony Johnson. I'll just put it there. I think it's a very difficult matchup. Johnson's got great wrestling, but he doesn't have Charlie Brenneman wrestling.
John, who you got in this fight?
I'm going to have to actually agree with Jeremy on this one. After beating my boy Rick Story, Brenneman, he shows that he's got the skills and the talent to really move forward. And I think, ring rust is definitely going to have an effect on Anthony Johnson's game. So I'm going to have to go with Brenneman.
Jeremy, who you got?
Big Anthony Johnson fan. My first UFC I ever attended live. He fought Tommy Spear in his first UFC fight. Love Anthony Johnson again, though. I just think Brenneman's superior and, not standing up pretty much everywhere else. I like Brenneman.
Yeah, Brenneman, like you said, defeating Rick Story, man, that was a blow. John and I are big fans of Rick Story. I'm pretty sure Jeremy is too. Man, I think I'm going to have to go with Charlie Brenneman. I think you guys just flipped me on that one. I was going to go at Rumble Johnson, but, there's a lot of things coming off an injury that affect you in the ring. And, I want to lean with Charlie Brenneman just because him taking out Rick Story was a huge thing to do. So
also, Charlie Brenneman, Steelers fan. Don't ever underestimate what that can do in the
going
cage.
out in the hard hat with the tough towel, terrible towel, whatever they're called. Jeremy, the resident Pittsburgh fan there, I'm sure he's going to rip me new and during the break. But when we come back, guys, we're going to take the co-main event and the main event of UFC Fight Night 6. You're watching Off the Mat.
UATV, celebrating 15 years of service.
All right, guys, welcome to your final segment of Off the Mat. As usual, I'm Bernard Oliver, that is Jeremy Hurt, and that is John Urcuyo. Going into the co-main event, we have Pat Barry versus a person I'm not a big fan of, Stephen Struve. Now, Jeremy asked me before the show, why don't I like Stephen Struve? He's kind of big for nothing. I feel like he's big for nothing. He's very long, and he's an MMA fighter. He's very talented. does not use that length. Imagine if Stephen Struve used his length like John Jones uses his length.
Right.
Rampage never found the distance to John Jones, and John Jones was in perfect striking distance of Rampage the whole fight. Never found his distance. Stephen Struve being 6'10"? 6'11". The tallest person in the UFC, I believe, in history. And you can't use your distance. There
have been other 6'11" guys.
Well, I'm saying.
I don't believe they've had a 7-footer. You're technically correct.
Anyway, Stephen Struve coming into the ring and not being able to, keep everybody at his reach. There's nobody else, really kind of touching him right now. And I just kind of feel like he's big for nothing.
He's not big for nothing. Stephen Struve's problem, like you meant, Stephen Struve thinks he's John Jones. That's his big problem. Stephen Struve will just stand straight up in front of a guy like, Brown, who's knocked out 11 guys in a row.
Yeah.
He'll just stand in front of him like,
with that long neck, you can't do that.
You can't stand directly in front of Brown, in front of Roy Nelson with your head up in the air. You're going to get knocked out. It's just a simple fact of life. Stephen Struve's a very talented fighter. I mean, a very talented fighter, and he's young. And he is physically very different from the rest of the game. 10 years from now, this guy could be a champion for several years. It's hard to say right now. The way he's fighting right now, though, not really encouraging. Like I said, he believes that he can brawl with anyone. The evidence doesn't seem to back him up on that. And
I feel like Dana and the committee behind making those fights, the Fertitta brothers, everybody who goes into making those fights, keep giving Stephen Struve a chance. And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve a chance. He definitely deserves a chance. Like you said, he's very talented. We've seen him be very talented. We've seen him do, submissions, KO people. We've seen him be very talented. But going against a person like Pat Barry, another huge KO guy, do you really see him performing well?
Well, and that's the situation, is if he's going to be able to train for these knockout artists, 10 out of his last 13 he's won. Those 3 losses, Travis Brown, Roy Nelson, and Junior Dos Santos. No slumps. Definitely no slumps. But he's got to find a way to get... He's like a little kid trapped in a big body. He's got the talent to be on the ground, to submit, work on the jiu-jitsu. But the problem is he wants to stand up and prove something. He wants to prove that 83-inch reach is worth something. And going against these guys who make a living off of standing up with people, it hasn't been proven very successful. I think Struve, if he can kind of get back to his game, scramble around and get these guys on the ground and really go towards his strength, 11 submissions for wins. The guy knows what he's doing on the ground. So I think that he has a good chance if he stays away from those KO punches.
See, now the way I think this fight is going to go, I just think Pat Barry, he's going to be, very angry losing that fight to Chet Congo that he basically won. Chet Congo woke up and knocked him out. He's going to be angry coming off that. Struve, of course, got knocked out too, so I'm sure he's going to have a lot of emotion going into the fight. I feel like Pat Barry is going to be a little too quick. He's going to get inside of him very quickly. And if Stephen doesn't try to go down to the ground and try to stand up with him, he's going to get KO'd. John, who you got in this fight?
With this one, I'm going to go with Stephen Struve. I think that he's finally going to change the way he's going about these fights, and he's really going to get back to his strengths and get the fight on the ground.
Jeremy, who you got?
At this point, I think I'm going with the theory that if I pick Stephen Struve enough times, sooner or later I'll be right. Barry's a very tough fighter. You saw he had Congo hurt a lot of times. That's what gets lost in the crazy reversal of that, is he was really taking the crap out of Chet Congo, and then. But he's got the reach of like Gaddafi these days. He doesn't get out there that much. I'm going to go with Stephen Struve. Sooner or later, I'm going to say Stephen Struve, and it's going to be right, and I'm going to gloat. This is the one.
You're going to gloat if he loses,
Good
Joey.
deal.
Let's be honest.
Yes.
I got to take Pat Barry on this. Like I said, I feel like he's worked a lot on covering up. He's not going to rush the KO if he sees it open. He's going to take it. Technique-wise, he's going to take it down. He's going to get inside of Stephen Struve's standing guard, and he's going to knock him out. That's where I see him happening in that fight. Going into our main event, though, a fight that a lot of people say maybe shouldn't have happened. Dominic Cruz versus Demetrious Johnson, because a lot of people say Demetrious Johnson didn't beat Miguel Angel Torres. Maybe there should have been a rematch there before he got a title shot. Doesn't matter now, because now he gets the title shot. Demetrious Johnson, very good on the ground. He's got okay striking. Dominic Cruz, though, very unorthodox striker, very, deceptive with his striking. He'll look like he's sticking his head out there, and you'll find a fist in your chin looking up at him like, what happened? I really feel like Dominic's going to be very deceptive like he usually is in all of his fights. Very unorthodox, going to keep that whole style going that he has, and I feel like it's going to end standing up. John, what do you think, or where do you think the fight's going to go?
Well, looking at Cruz's past, I'm going to have to say this is probably going to the cards. Most of his fights he's won by decision. But like you said, unorthodox striker, super quick. You know, he considered one of the top 10 pound-for-pound best fighters in MMA. I think that Cruz is definitely going to obviously have the advantage in this one and, you know, use that wiliness of being able to strike from all different kinds of positions and really take advantage of this. And like I said, it's more than likely going to go to the cards, and I think that Cruz is going to have no trouble with holding on to that belt.
I personally feel like Cruz is a little bit too long for Demetrius Johnson, a little bit too quick. Do you feel like Johnson has a chance, if he closes the distance, to get Dominic on the ground and do what he does on the ground?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you've got the athleticism of a guy like Mighty Mouse, when you've got the all-around skills and the technique, you've always got a chance. I'm with John. I think that, I'm with both of you. I think that Dominic Cruz is a little too long. He's been in this a little bit too long. He knows how to come from different angles. I think that very likely we're going to see him outpoint Johnson very badly, and I think that that's really the story of this fight. But, does he have a chance? Absolutely. Dominic Cruz, absolutely, he's a top 5 pound-for-pound guy in the world, in my opinion. If we were going to sit down and write him up, he's no chameleonaire of rap, but you know what I'm saying? Like, in fighting, he's like a top 5 all-time inside joke. But it's not one of those things where we know who's going to win this fight, really. It leans one direction, but yeah, absolutely. If he can use that athleticism to get in, get out, use that explosiveness to close the gap, absolutely he can win this fight.
And Evan, don't take, what I said, don't take that as Demetrius Johnson is one of those guys that, he's a can being thrown to Dominic Cruz. He has a good chin. I mean, he can take those strikes from Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz isn't necessarily the strongest guy. He can KO you, but, Demetrius Johnson has a chin to counter that KO power. Right. And, like I said, he can take him down to the ground. He has a very good ground game. All right, guys, our last pick of the night. Who you got in the main event?
Well, like I said, I think Cruz, he's fast, he's long, he's entertaining nonetheless. This one's definitely going to the cards. That knockout power, it's few and far between, but I think that he's going to be too much and definitely going to probably take all 3 rounds. I see Cruz, all 5 rounds, if it even gets to that, if he doesn't get submitted. I would say that's Johnson's really only chance is to take down Cruz, kind of beat him up on the ground and go for a submission. I just don't think it's going to go that way. I think they're going to stand up, trade blows, but Cruz is definitely going to come out ahead.
Jeremy, who you got?
John pretty much just covered it all, so I'm just going to give you a bad pun. Dominic goes into cruise control. I got Dominic Cruz in this fight.
That was horrible.
It was so horrible. It was fantastic.
It works. Well, like I said, if they get on the ground, Johnson has a very strong chance. But I feel like, can you get Dominic Cruz to the ground is what I feel like. I don't think you can. I got to go with Dominic Cruz on that fight. With that, that's going to do it for us this week on Off the Mat, guys. Hope you tune into the show. We're going to pitch it to John's promo here. John is doing it dirty with the promos. We got a promo for next week's event, UFC 136. For Off the Mat, I'm Bernard Oliver. That's Jeremy Hurt. That's John Arcuyo. Until next time, we'll see you at the fights.